Hey there! Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Francine Sinclair. I've been around the block in the entrepreneurial world, creating and repurposing social media content for experts and CEOs. I know firsthand how it can feel lonely, especially when you're mixing your Christian faith into your business life. So I figured, why should we go it alone? Who said that faith and business can't mix? And that's where this podcast comes in. Join me as we meet influential Christian entrepreneurs who are showing us how to blend business and faith in a way that works. We're here to prove that you can express your faith without compromising your business success. On the Influential Christian Entrepreneur, you're not just listening, you're part of the gang. So let's start this journey together. Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover inspiring stories and strategies of successful Christian entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing John Robertson, who is an expert in transforming crisis and mental health challenges into an opportunity for growth, or the opportunity for growth. A leadership and culture specialist, he has over 30 years of crisis intervention training and experience with numerous workplaces, families, first responders, communities, and has served on an international trauma and crisis boards. Welcome, John Robertson.
My pleasure, and thank you, Francine, for inviting and allowing me to be your guest. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. So, John, you and I met through a common acquaintance. He said that you were a fellow Christian entrepreneur. And because you are a Christian, I would like to know, everybody has a different story. And I would like to know how you became
Actually,
a Christian.
It was one of those stories. It was 100 years ago because I was raised when there was no power, and we went to school with granite and a chisel, and picture Flintstone. At least in my kid's mind's eye, that's the school how I started out. But in those days, Billy Graham, what was it called? Evangelistic Association, maybe. They used to do movies. Forward, gave my life to Christ. I was about 17. And so some would say 60, 70, 80 years ago. It wasn't that long. But one of the things that became a catalyst for the work is that's when I gave my life to Christ. But there are two commitments that every Christian makes. First is Jesus as Savior. Second is Jesus as Lord. So when I gave my life to Christ, Savior, I was 17. The problem is I wasn't discipled, which is the process of allowing Jesus to be Lord. The problem is I wasn't discipled. To make it really simple, there's two ways to live, right? One is I've got the reins and he's on the wagon with me and we're journeying, or he has the reins. And let me give you you and your listeners, a simple snapshot. Years ago, I discovered that being a Christian is a little like a bicycle built for two. And for years, I was on the front street and seat, and my Jesus was kind of on the back. And that prayer life that many of us have? God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this corner. Can you pedal with me? Can you lean with me? Can you help me get through this? And if you get me through this, I promise, blah, blah, blah. Somewhere along the line, I discovered that if he went on the front seat, all I had to do was pedal. And we also, on our bicycle built for two, we had saddlebags, they're called in motorcycles, but backpacks for the bike. And it was the most fascinating thing because we would stop somewhere and it would be random. And I'd be blessed with something, or somebody would give me a word of encouragement or something. And the next stop, the person needed exactly what I was just given. And there have been a couple corners that we've come into that I thought, we are so going to die going into this corner. And I'm whining on the back seat, and I can still hear the voice, not literally, but hear the voice in my mind's eye. John, shut up and pedal. I've got this. I can still hear the voice, not literally, but hear the voice in my mind's eye. Yes. Yeah.
Huh. That's a pretty good way to put it, because it really kind of goes into what you do for a living. Because you're talking about whining while you're in the wagon thinking you're going to die, screaming.
So there's four
elements
of definition of crises. The first three are the most obvious: sudden, unexpected, threat to goals,
tell us
normal.
a little bit about that.
But it's the fourth one that matters. The fourth definition factor of crisis definition is that point where the old is no longer sustainable and change is a given. It's not an option. And what happens is, if change is not required, call it what it is. It's failure. Move on, learn. And so what I do is, there's always two sets of values in every organization and in most people's lives. There's the ones on the website, in the brochures, the ones that we tell people. And then there's the ones we actually operate by. And what happens, I call crises the hot water tea bag effect. If we want to find out what's important to a person or an organization, put them in hot water. What's inside always leaks out. And that's what I do. Pre-work, so that when it hits the fan, what leaks out are the values that people may not like, but they are the values that people can trust and respect and follow, even when they don't like us. What leaks out are the values that people may not like, but they are the values that people can trust.
So how does that when we say crisis?
So first thing, please, listeners and Francine, I know you and I chatted about this previously.
Or a family is going through,
but the event is never the real crisis, and that is the most important thing to understand. So you and I have a motor vehicle collision on the way to work. You're doing that kind of sucks. Oh well, life happens. Let's carry on. I'm still a deer in the headlights effect, kind of thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? So it could be a collision on the way to work. Could be seeing something fatal. It could be a spouse diagnosed with cancer. It could be a favorite employee retiring. It could be a change of leadership or management. It could be, I'm just going through some examples that pruning of the workplace, downsizing, restructuring, whatever word they happen to give it this month. But it's that when the status quo is no longer status, that could be a crisis for some people. And right now, I don't know what it feels like for you, but holy smokes, it just seems like every time we turn around, another person's being diagnosed with cancer. And in the workplace, what happens if one of those people are truly the ones that, there are certain people, man, you just love to see them. So it could be the leader, it could be the admin, it could be the custodial, it could be a colleague, and all of a sudden that person gets walloped. So the first one is the event is never the real crisis. But the second is how leadership handles a crisis will tilt towards engagement and health, or unhealth and disengagement. It will never leave it neutral. I am not asking you to be transparent if it's not in your wheelhouse, but I want you to think about a situation where you were kind of up to your neck in alligators, one of those hot water tea bags in mind of up to your neck in alligators, hot water tea bag moment. A crisis for you. Okay. You will have noticed two people.
I live in Florida.
Two groups of people in your life. The people you always thought would always be there, and the people you didn't even know cared. And what we learned through those hot water tea bag moments is people that we thought would always be there evaporate. And some of the ones that we didn't even know care. Boom, what can I do? Here I am. show up.
What we learned through those came back moments is we thought would always be there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the ones that we didn't know.
Show up, right? And so you are essentially you're hired by the leader of an organization.
The chicken and the egg.
I'm assuming I'm not.
Who cares for the leadership?
To help them, because just because they are in a leadership
on the leader's head to say bad girl, bad boy, bad girl, but who helps the leader
guide their company through
keep their head in the game while he or she is trying to support their people? Well, big time. And I don't know what it's like for you, but I don't need more experts in the stands telling me run faster, swim harder, paddle harder. No, I need somebody on the field beside me to say, we've got this.
Mm-hmm. They also need support.
Well, and it's coding, right? It's we tie up all the sins of everybody and pin it on somebody. Then, that's not one person's problem. That's our
to do it with them
issue.
and guide them through, because it's a lot of pressure, and I can only imagine,
Right,
even
turn the book the other way around, so it's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Correct.
And so what inspired you?
It got released in
My editors
21 or 22, but I wrote it about 8 years before, and
I was about to,
into
and I think
people,
they can't
editors
see
who would say,
this,
well, you can't say that. Well, you can't say that.
This platform yet,
and,
but
well, that's what I want to say.
The Roar is your first book.
It took me a while, and because I'm not an English major, it was
you write it over
like squeezing a water balloon. It was one of the most frustrating things I've ever experienced.
During 2020?
And the whole premise behind it is stop telling people about mental health and mental well-being. Give them a solution to help them thrive through storms or their roars. But don't make it clinical. Make it practical. Make it relevant. Because we were talking about a topic that mental health has become its own animal because of the way things are worded. Most people, I shouldn't say most, many people
and so
define mental health.
Editors were telling you
as
you can't say that, you can't say that. What's the point of writing a book?
Just because I'm not ill or sick doesn't mean I'm healthy. And so what I wanted to do was transform that conversation from why settle for being resilient? Why not thrive? And as leaders, why not finish well rather than just finish? Just because I'm not ill or sick doesn't mean I'm healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Transform that conversation. I settle being resilient. Why not thrive?
Yeah.
Why not finish well?
Right. Thrive. I like how I'm reading the book, and that distinction between being resilient, which is going to get you here and keep you there, versus thriving, which is going beyond. And that's where we all want to be. Absolutely. Yes. I agree with that. And so, John, tell me a little bit about the premise behind this podcast is that we've always been told to never mix your faith and your business. And, I've worked for the corporate world before. I know that was a big no-no. Now that I'm an online entrepreneur, I found the same thing to be true. People don't think that it is appropriate to talk about your faith, to talk about politics. But in here, we're talking about faith as it relates to your business. You shouldn't put that out there.
There's a bunch of things that are really fascinating here.
Alienate people, especially people who
if you look at the terms, and this is where a lot of the problems happen.
It could lose you business.
Are we talking about beliefs,
and it could be a major turn
or religion?
In fact, it can even give you a negative
Most
image.
people don't differentiate, and that's where a lot of the problems come from. I agree with don't mix religion and politics in the workplace.
It's appropriate, however you want to put it, to mix your faith in your business.
Mixing faith or beliefs is what gives depth to a relationship. Mm-hmm. If it is I language, not you, Francine, what you should believe, what you should have, well, that's not sharing. That's lecturing or whatever you want me to call it. The second part is if I am sharing what is true for me, period, mm-hmm. and you don't like it, then who's the one with the issue? So, for example, the way I compare sharing beliefs and faith is if I'm sharing it and I love my wife, does that matter to me if it offends you? Mm-hmm. Hopefully not, because if it does matter, I have a bigger problem on my hands. And what has happened is, especially in churchianity, we have tried to help God out with the convicting, and that's why it doesn't mix. And I mean, I can go to any of the lobby groups. They're sharing their faith. They're sharing their belief.
No.
So what you're saying is you're welcome to share what you have faith, what you believe, but I'm not allowed?
Yeah.
Well, hold it. The second part is many psychology fields do not allow beliefs to be part of counseling or therapy. And the problem with that is every time you and I get on the highway or on a plane, mm-hmm. we are living our belief. Because when I get on the highway, I expect other people to obey the Highway Traffic Act. Therefore, they're not driving all over the, when I get on or faith, touche. And when I get on a plane, I believe, I have faith that I'm going to land where the ticket was paid for. So beliefs and faith are part of everyday conversations and everyday living. Mm-hmm. It is how we have those conversations. So, for example, if somebody shares something with me that, well,
that's a lot of faith.
I can say, well, that's not what I believe, but okay. Well, what do you mean? Well, no, you have your point of view, and I don't share the same point of view. That doesn't mean one of us is right or wrong. Now, the other part that always comes out of this is key of leadership. We do not share a definition of tolerance that is actually from the dictionary. Tolerance used to mean you're welcome to have a belief that your hair color is better than my highlights. Today, tolerance means you have to endorse my hair color as equally as your own. Well, that's not tolerance. And so therefore, leadership have to be convicted and convinced enough of their own faith, of their own values, to be able to share, no, this is what I believe. But more importantly, this is what I'm living, and this is what you should see. The problem that keeps happening is this is what I'm sharing, but what you're seeing is not matching. I do. It's kind of like, imagine how it's going to work for me if I go to my wife and say, sweetheart, I really love you. I love being married to you, but I kind of like my girlfriends too. You don't, my kids wouldn't tolerate that from me, never mind my wife. But what happens, and as a Christian, I have to define, and my question that I always come back to,
what a lot
how do you
of
want
people have a
people to
problem
describe
with.
you non-physically?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a verse in Peter that says, be willing to give the reason for the hope that is within you. But it's that last part that a lot of people forget. When they ask. And if they don't ask, they're not the ones with the issue. So the whole premise behind this book is a term I coined, passio fidelis. Passio is the root word of passion. Fidelis is the root word of fidelity, faithfulness, and loyalty. If is Christ my Lord and Savior, unless it gets really hot or the fires crank up or whatever.
When they ask, exactly.
And if they don't ask, they're the ones with the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise behind this book is a term I coined, passio.
Simple. I tie it back to, so when people start talking about our values, our beliefs and thoughts determine our values. So if I believe the world should spin around me, you will see the value of selfishness.
So how do you,
if I believe that I am here for a distinct amount of time to serve and encourage others,
what I'm trying to
then
ask
that belief and thinking should give birth to values that others,
how do you
John can be such a pain in the neck, but man, I love having him in my boat. And and this is brag alert. There is no humility involved in this, but I got a great compliment from a guy. He's in one of those lightning rod roles. So whether it be first responder, bylaw, in kind of that, nobody likes rules right now. Anyways, his boss called me to say, can you meet with him? Because he's getting anxious and depressed and a whole bunch of other things. Anyways, after a series of conversations about values, and I would say, so what are those values based on? Well, it's just what I value. And I said, okay, so if you're meeting with a client, customer, person who values something different, how can you have a good conversation? Because you're honoring your values, he or she are honoring theirs. You're both right, but you're both wrong. There's no neutral ground. Anyways, long story short, he ended up having a great conversation. He's decided to start exploring his faith because he needs to find something to anchor his values to that is not his thoughts and feelings. And his compliment to me was, he said, John, you have the great gifting to be able to take my hand, slap me across my face with my hand so that I want to say thank you. And it was like, I'm not really sure. And it was perfect because we did the core work, and now I touch in on kind of once a month. And he made a comment. He said, I said, so how are you doing? And he said, I've actually acquired a taste for slapping myself across the face and thanking myself. And it was like, awesome. How perfect is that?
And the way you do it.
If Christ, God,
with a straight face too,
are the truth, then use that as a foundation or an anchor point to pivot around. if they're not foundational or they're not the truth, then our pivot point is always going to be shifting.
Yeah. So what I'm getting is you bring your faith up when in the right context, when in normal conversation, and when people ask. Is that correct?
Safe place in the frontier. You got to have a clear vision as to where you want to go. And a log is a journal to sail the seas because you want other people to come with you, and there's no point going alone. And it's in uppercase because it's an acronym for TLOG, for the love of God.
Right. And so what about, I find it quite clever what you did with the name of your company.
What a lot of us forget is
tell people about it
where most of Jesus' miracles were.
What does that mean?
They weren't in the synagogue. They were in the marketplace. So, and so added to that, he was a carpenter for 30 years. He was a minister for 3. So where did he get all his illustrations from? Where did he learn?
So unless you tell people, they never know that it actually means for the love of God. That's a clever way. He was not a philosopher.
He was a carpenter.
Your business.
And what comes out of that is he was earthly relevant while being heavenly focused.
Mm-hmm. Right, the marketplace.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that stat, but I wouldn't be surprised by that because look around. I was reading this woman, I think it was just today. She was sharing about how she's really challenged about, do I get up and go to church on Sunday morning, and trying to find a fellowship that was real and applicable and relevant. And she was sharing just that challenge of,
right.
I know who it was.
And I heard a statistic the other day that 8 to 10 times more people convert in the marketplace than at church right now.
Yeah, no. And one of the things, Francine, that happens is if we are looking at where most people struggle living their faith, it's not in the church. It's everywhere else. And I live my faith with my neighbor who is a royal pain in the neck if it's that high up.
That was me.
And I live my faith with that workplace.
I'm like, that sounds familiar.
I live my faith in a time where truth doesn't matter. Social media.
You got me for a minute. I thought it was somebody else. I'm like, hold on. What?
Well, if I don't choose to be proactive, then I'm always going to spend my time reacting. And I can't remember the author's name, but it was everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten, because the important things are seldom urgent.
Mm. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I just love how you put things just to the point, clear and concise. You brought so many points in. Yes, I wrote that post on Sunday morning because I became a Christian 3 years ago. Part of the reason I haven't been to church is because the lockdowns and the whole thing going on. But as I started
Well, and what you put your finger
churches,
on
I
is,
not have been able to
you know what? There's not going to be a perfect church because, as numerous people have said, would a perfect church want me as a member?
Production. They use
the whole time part of that
for this Broadway type production, and the message itself is very short. And
God's
I feel like wasn't able to sink my teeth into it, or
they're not allowed to use.
There's just so many different reasons, and so I felt like
that's dishonoring to God.
I wish it was easier to find a church that isn't afraid of talking about
sorry, every time I hear something like that,
the issues that
I remember years ago saying to my mom, I held the door
I haven't been able to, but I think I'm getting close to it.
I said, age before beauty.
Close to it. So
and as she was stepping through the door, she looked at me and she said, and pearls before swine, and kept walking. Well played, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the kind of person that's tired of reacting, tired of programs, tired of, always playing that old circus or fair game called whack-a-mole. An issue arises, we treat it, but the symptoms are getting addressed, but the root problem is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And those people that want to peel away the veneer to say, okay, what's at the foundation of this? What can I do to lead into different? And whatever that different means, and not look at selling a program, but which is just transfer of information. But the process of transformation is growth, not
type of person that could benefit.
It's gardening, it's cultivating, it's sowing, it's all those things. And it takes longer on the front end, but the dividends are on the back end. So rather than looking as an ROI, look at it as an investment, a valuable investment. And so those people who are feeling like they're on a treadmill or merry-go-round or playing whack-a-mole, who are getting exhausted, who want to finish well, who want to thrive, and they know that their organization has kind of been there, done that with programs, but the residual value just isn't sticking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Francine, you asked me at the beginning how I became a Christian. My work is based around the gap. So I gave my life to Christ, but not as Lord. Coaching in the church is called discipleship. Coaching is all around helping people live out their values and their focus. It is not selling a program. And one of the visuals I use for people that I serve is let's build your huddle, just like North American football.
Because I've been
on the field around you that you can share mind and heart with. The rest of the world sees your bones.
Issues,
but compare your play so that you can run it. And don't put more experts in the stands.
Oh yeah, that's
great. You should. You know you should. You know you should. That's not helpful. But people on the field beside you who are able to say, yeah, that didn't go quite according to plan, and then grow forward.
Mm-hmm.
Easiest way is the website, fortlog.co, and it is .co on purpose.
Right.
Because
you get information, but then how to apply
colleague, collaborator, coach. I work with people, not a .com, not a .org, not a whatever. And fortlog.co, so the easiest way is hello at fortlog or john at fortlog.co. But and the show notes, I'm going to send you a landing page for this, follow up for this. But just have that conversation. Shoot me an email. Let's have a conversation. No, I am not selling anything because my values, I may not be the best person. Welcome to the human species.
Yeah, Let's go forward together. And so what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, it's not exactly an uncommon name. And when we first moved to the town that we moved into, we went into the bank and the bank did the, John Robertson. And turns out there was a guy who borrowed tens of thousands, borrowed in quotation mark, tens of thousands from a whole bunch of people and evaporated. So when I moved, yeah, not a name you wanted to choose, put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's important. But you're also active on LinkedIn. So you can find the link to that. I will put it in the show notes as well, because I know John Robertson, there might be a few thousand John Robertsons on LinkedIn. So. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands,
Oh gosh.
And Francine, the other thing that we have to keep in mind is it is like being married.
Oh man, John Robertson. Well, I want to thank you, John Robertson, for being here today. I know this is going to be a conversation that our listeners are going to enjoy, just because
the fact that everybody loves my wife. Reviews are mixed on me, but everybody loves my wife.
That you choose to share
is part
your
of
faith
the whole
in business,
piece. I'm not sharing
the
it
idea
for
that
anybody else's response. I'm sharing it because it's important.
How we use, when you share your faith from a first person, which is what I always say, sharing your first person account, right? Your stories is a way that flows naturally, doesn't feel like you're telling people you should. And then also waiting till people ask. So that's one way of doing it for sure. Absolutely. And I love that. And it depends on everybody's personality, right? Because everybody has a different way of doing it. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, absolutely. It's important to you, and you're just wanting to be transparent. And that's part of the whole deal today. When we are, as entrepreneurs, we have an advantage, and is that we are people. So we can share things that a company can't, because they're not people, even though they say they are, right? So that is excellent. And so I will put his information in the show notes, people. I want to thank everyone for being here today. We'll be back next Tuesday. And if you're a Christian CEO or executive seeking to authentically integrate your faith and professional brand on LinkedIn to inspire others, further God's kingdom, and leave a legacy, let's connect. You can contact me at hello@francineSinclair.com, or you can just go to my website it's www.francineSinclair.com. I kind of feel like an old schooler when I say www.francineSinclair.com. All right. So we'll be back next Tuesday with another insightful interview. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a fantastic week. Bye. If you're a Christian business leader or executive, I invite you to work with me to create a faith-driven personal brand on LinkedIn that will empower you to navigate the intersection between faith and business. Feel free to contact me directly at hello@francineSinclair.com. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to follow me, Francine Sinclair, on Facebook or LinkedIn. See you next week for a new episode.